We are live.
Welcome into another edition of On the Beat Live. I'm Tommy Ashley. That's Jeremiah Holloway, Adam Smith, and of course, the man that makes it all run, John Bauman. I'll start with you, Adam. I usually do. The old guys got to stick together. The hype train is real. Uh, it is starting to really pick up in Chapel Hill. But what I heard from Mac, what I heard from the players today, focus, focus, focus. They're staying off of that roller coaster that caught them the last couple of years. Big game on Saturday.
Is it a must-win game, Tommy? I saw someone was already asking in the
Oh,
chat. They were giving you the business. Preston from Greensboro.
here, I like this. Tyson Tumberland says they are all must wins now. Yes, sir. I think it's a big game. I think it's a stair step game for North Carolina. If you want to get to the top, you got to take these steps. I think it's for that purpose. It's a must win.
I think to what you mentioned just a few seconds ago, I think it's good to hear Mac and the players, and a lot of times with the players the last couple of weeks, it's been sort of unprompted that I'm sure they're hearing it from Mac, where they go and they mention how last season sort of went off the cliff. I mean, Drake refers to the Georgia Tech game last year all the time. So I mean, I think the good thing about it is they're highly aware of where things went wrong last year. And you hear them saying those things, and then look how they played this past Saturday against Syracuse. It's kind of like, like when you see something like that, just it sort of like makes you a believer, not that they hadn't been playing well this season, but I felt like they took it to another level against Syracuse. And yeah, it's a interesting analogy. Is analogy the right word? Interesting metaphor, the stair step games where you really can, if I got the schedule over here, you really can see this thing shaping up if they continue to play well and win these games. And I think the Miami game's super interesting because I think Miami is very talented. Obviously, they had the costliest and dumbest of blunders you've ever seen. We all know it, but I'll be interested to see how they show up. I mean, I think they've got a ton of talent, and I think it's gonna be two good teams going at it Saturday night under the lights.
Yeah, finally get to see those high-dollar Kenan Stadium lights in full effect, the blue lights, the Jordan lights, and all that stuff. Jeremiah, I listened to Miami coaches on Monday and then their players today as well. Every one of them, to a man, says they turned the page and all that. It was interesting. Some of the media members were not going to let it go, especially to the point where one of them asked, "Do you still have faith in Mario Cristobal?" I love the offensive lineman that got caught on the meme and all that we've seen saying, "What are we doing? What are we doing?"
Yeah.
If you haven't listened to his press conference, go listen to it. He dropped the S word about 4 or 5 times during his press availability. But Jeremiah, I guess that's the thing that people always talk about with Miami over the years is their front runners. Things go bad, they go sideways in a hurry. Did not sound like a team trying to do that after what Adam said, and it's got to be one of the most brain dead, bonehead moves ever in college football. There's been some. I think Mac Brown kneeled on 4th down in Charlotte 2019. Folks seem to forget that one. That could have turned out very similar. But things happen. Miami players seem ready. Your take on how Carolina's approaching this?
Yeah, for sure. Well, just real quick on that game. I mean, it was the same night, obviously, as the Syracuse game. I'm like winding down because sometimes, like, you watch the game, you do all this work, so you don't go home and go straight to sleep. Sometimes you wind down a little bit. So I'm on the couch, I have the thing on mute, and I look at them. They're running a play. Georgia Tech has no timeouts, and like I'm confused. They're running the play. That's the type of stuff you do on Madden, where you're just like goofing off just so you can see what will happen. But I think the way Carolina's approaching it, they kind of understand. I think really both the coaches and the players that we had talked to on Monday and today, when you lose like that, if you're Miami, you really have, kind of two options. One is to lose all faith in your coach and the season's a wash and you'll never get the respect of the team back. We will see how that turns out, right? But from a football standpoint, it's like, okay, that's, you should come out firing, right? Like, I think UNC is preparing for a team that is going to come out firing. Obviously, it was a close game last year when they were at Miami, but now with Miami come off such a devastating and embarrassing loss, I think they're expecting Miami to try to do what they do best. Really, Miami lost that game mostly because of the turnovers. They had obviously the one at the end, but they had 3 interceptions. Van Dyke had 3 interceptions, which are obviously drive killers. A similar situation to what UNC faced last week. They were playing a Syracuse team that had turned it over a lot, and that's why they lost to Clemson. North Carolina was able to turn Syracuse over twice, but really once in like the real flow of the game, when it was, before it had fully been decided, I guess. But I think the way, North Carolina's approaching it is, hey, this is a team that is still very talented. They actually are still in the top 25. They're 25th right now. This is a team that is talented. We've seen them before, so I think they're trying to not take them lightly. They're trying to understand the situation to be like, hey, this team is not gonna, accept their, lower place in the ACC. I'm just saying that because they lost. They're not gonna accept this loss in the ACC. They're gonna try to climb back into the rankings as soon as they can.
Adam,
I'm
go ahead.
sorry, Tommy.
No, I missed the private message there, folks. Inside baseball, we communicate on the side, but I missed it. So go ahead, Adam.
I love the private message, Tommy. By the way, you guys ought to see them.
They're raunchy.
That's not bad, Tommy. I sent it in. I was trying to beat the shot clock there. I was just going to say, as I was listening to Jeremiah talk,
shot clock.
Yeah, there you go. As I was listening to Jeremiah talk, we looked at each other today. It's like exhibit number 100,000 of what just a regular dude Drake Maye is. Where we were talking about the Miami Georgia Tech debacle, and he was like, I turned the game off. Because why wouldn't you? He said when Miami got the ball back and it was effectively over, he turned it. And I thought, yeah, I'm sure so many people did. And then he said, what did he say, Jeremiah? He said, then I realized social media was starting to go crazy about what was happening. And
I think he said his phone was blowing up or something.
Yeah,
right?
So like everyone else, probably like Jeremiah's got the game on mute. Drake Maye's turned it. We can confirm that Mac was on the couch. We weren't sure.
That's hilarious.
We weren't
not
sure
the recliner. Not the recliner.
Yeah.
Mac, if you're listening, I have a recliner and it is worn out because I sit in it all the time.
But I just wanted to add that real quick that Drake, we got the sense that after they played so well against Syracuse, a lot of them, Mac and a lot of guys, Cedric Gray, we're going to go home and kick back and watch the team they're playing next because the Miami Georgia Tech game was 8:00 on ACC Network. And I just thought it was interesting where Drake was like, yeah, the thing was over, so I turned it.
Well, a couple things about that game. Georgia Tech, for some reason, is not a really good football team, but they can play. They can pop up one-game situations and play. Carolina saw that last year. Somebody in the chat asked about if he's so good, how did he have so many interceptions? Georgia Tech just mixes coverages, disguises coverages real well. And if you remember a couple of years ago or down in Atlanta, Sam Howell couldn't get out of his own way against Georgia Tech, kept turning it over, fumbling it and all that. So Georgia Tech's got some players. One thing about this game, though, and I think we need to circle back, Miami lost ridiculously, but Miami's still talented. Jeremiah, they're still huge in the lines. Tyler Van Dyke, I don't have it in front of me. I'd wager he's probably thrown for close to 900 yards the last 2 times he's played Carolina combined. I know he went
a lot. Yeah.
It is a lot. And even last year when he was terrible leading up to that Carolina game, he had a really good game. But Jeremiah, I think that's what keeps this North Carolina team focused because Miami's still good. And they've still got enough athletes to beat you if you're not 100% invested.
And that's what Gene Chizik and even Chip Lindsey were talking about. Gene Chizik said that Miami had the fastest offense that they've seen so far. Well, I think his exact words were one of the fastest offenses, if not the fastest offense. And then Chip Lindsey said that Miami's one of the best defenses they've seen so far, if not the best. So like you said, Tommy, like this is a team that still has a lot of talent. This is a team that, I mean, this was one basic football decision away from being a battle of the undefeateds. Like it really was. Like, and I think the whole conversation around this game uh, would have, first of all, it was different. It was a lot different, a few weeks ago. The potential of it being a prime time, and it would be even that much more different now had Miami actually had the 5-0 record. I guess aesthetically, people like to see both of them are top 15 and both of them are 5-0. But yeah, certainly you have to, account for. I mean, Tyler Van Dyke doesn't have the most eye-popping numbers this year. His completion percentage is really good. He does have 12 touchdown passes right now. 3 of his 4 interceptions were in that last game. Obviously, I'm reading it off here now, but they have some talented receivers, and then they have some, on the defensive standpoint, they are, pretty solid run defense. I think they're like 1 or 2. They're number 1. That's right. They're number 1 in the ACC as a run defense, and
And
North Carolina
number 1 in the country.
didn't even realize that. I appreciate.
Yeah, they've given up I think they've given up the fewest rushing yards. Now I know I don't know if they've played. I know they've played Temple and Texas A&M and some of these teams. So, but statistically, they've given up the fewest.
Yeah, statistically. So, and this is a UNC team also that just got the running game back going. So they had struggled with it a little bit against Minnesota and Pitt. But against Syracuse, they managed to, and Syracuse has a good run defense too. Like Syracuse had a top run defense as far as the ACC, but UNC was able to take advantage of that. Part of that was getting healthy on the line, and also, I mean, Marion Hampton was a man out there. Like that dude was breaking tackles like just early on. And that's before they opened it up with the pass. So we'll see. If what's the phrase, like a unstoppable force and an immovable object or whatever it is. Like we'll see how that goes. And by the way, these are blue light glasses. So that is why there's a glare. I'm taking care of my eyes today. So that's what we're doing.
I have the numbers too.
Mine are readers. So Jeremiah's got the high dollar. I got $20 for.
Oh no, these are just these are like off Amazon, man. These are just plastic.
It looks like you can see the future with those things, Jeremiah. Like you're looking ahead.
It's all the score predictions right here now.
I've got the numbers here as well for Miami's quarterback. The last 2 years, this has been a little bit of a get right game for Miami because in 2021, they came into North Carolina. They were 2-4 at the time, and they scored 42 points. TVD's stats in that game, the Miami quarterback, he threw for 264, 1 touchdown and 3 interceptions. And then last year, he really went off, 496 yards, 3 touchdowns to 1 interception. Like you were saying, Tommy, I think one of his best games of the year. So both times the last 2 years, Miami has come in with a losing record to this game. So their offense has still put up big points, even though maybe their team performance hasn't been as good coming into the North Carolina game.
And they had pulled him. The week before Carolina went down there last year. They had suffered a horrific loss to Middle Tennessee, and they had pulled Van Dyke, hadn't they? Like they had brought in
Garcia, wasn't it?
As we were doing the opponent preview, I was like, we don't know if Van Dyke's going to start. And then, he almost threw for 500 yards.
Yeah, he can play. He can make some plays. He talked about in their presser availability today. He talked about that he made a couple bad throws. A couple times they were off. Not good communication that led. I think one of the interceptions was in the red zone, so that was tough for them, and that hurts the scoring. Like they all said, though, that it never should have come down to the end. But the bottom line is they let it come down to the end. And so let's talk a little bit about North Carolina. Adam, the entire talk was Tez Walker. So let's talk about Tez Walker. I know you asked Drake, and I know we talked to the coaches about it. He's back fully involved. I do like what Mac said on Monday. He said, we're done with the Tez talk. Now he's just a member of the team. So let's get focused on that. But how much of this that noise settling down, him getting to get first team reps or whatever and having a normal week of practice, how big is that for him and for this team?
It's kind of crazy to get your head around, isn't it? Like if you think about you think about the turbulence just sort of settling in. there. Tez Walker today is what, Tuesday, and Tez Walker is by all accounts going through a normal game week. He's not on the scout team. And like I guess it's not that it hasn't been that long since it was August the 8th. We were all there. You remember? Thank God you were there, Tommy. You're getting these guys on camera that day doing immediate reaction. I was sprinting to the Inside Carolina office. I ran. I really did. I ran. But it's sort of fascinating to think about. And yeah, so last week, obviously, they get the news, which I thought was kind of shocking in a way, on Thursday. So, Jeremiah has asked about it this week. We've asked about it this week. It's kind of interesting the way that the cram session that went on to try to get him ready. Mac has said several times, Tez and Lonnie Galloway immediately went down and started working on the whiteboard. Like Lonnie was immediately going through there. And I'm sure our audience has probably watched the Chip Lindsey video. Chip was saying to us the other day that he stayed up all day Friday, which, but when you get to Friday, usually you're sort of everything's installed, obviously. But he's talking about Friday. He's working on ways when to get Tez in, personnel packages, ways to use them. And he said Friday night he was still working on stuff like that. So, we're talking about 11th hour stuff. So, yeah, I think the dust in terms of Tez is finally settled, which is, again, it's sort of an amazing thing to think about. And yeah, now it'll be interesting to see. I thought the way Carolina went about it last week was the right thing in terms of not starting him. I think everyone agrees he's the most talented receiver on the roster, even with Nate McCullum, who's a super talented guy. And everything we have heard for months was he's UNC's second best offensive player behind Drake Maye, was what we've heard around the program, the coaches too. But I still think it was the right thing to do not to start him because they've been playing so well with the three guys they have out there, and then sort of bring him in. So now we'll get to see a full week with the guys who are going to play. And does he go out there first Saturday night? I don't know. What's the combination if he does? There were some, I don't know if you guys noticed it, but I don't think Jeremiah and I have even talked about it. But I thought it was interesting how there were combinations with him and J.J. Jones out there on the field, which, sometimes you sort of think of J.J. and Tez in the same position, but I thought that was sort of a dynamic look when you got Tez outside on one side, J.J. on the other, and then Nate McCullum or Kobe Paso or one of those guys working underneath. Good God. That's there's a lot to like about that, I think, if you're a Carolina fan. So, yeah, we wrote that Saturday was sort of all systems go. They were finally fully assembled was one of the things we said. And it's interesting to think that now 5 weeks into the season, this UNC offense looks like it's becoming an even, greater thing than it was before. So I think there's a lot to like.
And building off of that, Adam, I think one thing that I liked from the UNC offense, in addition to everything you just talked about, I liked how they got the running backs involved in the pass game. Looking at the stats here from Saturday, Amarian Hampton, 3 catches for 25 yards. Caleb Hood had a catch, and British Brooks had a catch for 2 catches, actually, for 9 yards. So I think on top of all of the additional deep threats that were added with Tez on the roster, if they can also get the ball to the running backs, those easy pitch and catches, that's a lot of free yards as well. I noticed that this past Saturday. I think that's something to keep going back to moving forward throughout the season.
And one of those British catches was a little check down. Drake was talking about it today. I considered posting it on the message board where Drake said, "You can never go broke making a profit." I mean, but that was, I think one of those passes to British was a check down that kept, it wasn't the sexiest thing in the world, but it was a third down check down, and British then wheeled around and got the first down, with his legs.
If you're going to steal somebody's name in the chat, you got to know that John Copenhaver broke his hand against South Carolina and played with a club, so that might have affected his time since week 1. But he is he's certainly a big part of this offense, as is Kamari Morales, as is Bryson Nesbitt. And let's talk a little bit about Bryson, Jeremiah. He you know, at times he disappears, and he's awfully talented. But lately, he's been that guy that they've talked about who can play tight end or play receiver or do the NFL thing, and he's looked really good a few times this year. Touchdown pass last weekend. I think he's a guy that can make a lot of noise that we might not be talking about in the lead up to this Miami game.
Yeah, I mean, he's almost I mean, well, not even almost. Like he's really an extra receiver out there. Just with the, you look at his size, you look at, excuse me, his athleticism. He's caught a couple of touchdown passes this year that were just like so. They just kind of came naturally, like he's running to the end zone like he's a wide receiver. So he adds another element to. He's probably the best like pass catching tight end out of that group of him, Kamari Morales, and John Copenhaver. That's the element he brings. He's a guy that you can, put in the slot. Maybe even if you really wanted to, maybe you could put him out wide. But a lot of times they like to have him in that slot. So in addition to, because even with Tez being back, and Tez had 8 targets. Nate McCollum, I don't actually remember the exact number, but he had 7 catches, so around that many targets, or a little bit more. But Bryson Nesbitt, in the midst of all of that, had 5 catches, which was more than obviously what they gave a player like a JJ Jones, who had been their leading receiver. But anytime they can get Bryson Nesbitt involved, John was just bringing up the point of how they were able to get a lot of the running backs involved. Well, like when they get the tight ends involved, I mean, that ball just moves around so much. Like, I think the South Carolina game, 10 different guys caught a pass, and on Saturday it was 11. It was I think it was Caleb Hood would have been the extra guy that would have caught a pass. So that's both running backs and Hood. Then it's all 3 of your tight ends. Then it's the rest being your wide receivers. So. Yeah, but when you look at Nesbitt, and even like a Kamari Morales, because Kamari Morales has made some plays in the passing game, I would say like he's certainly made plays out there. But I think that dynamic Nesbitt had, and I just put up the stats. He's caught a pass. I think he's actually the only tight end to do this for UNC. He's caught a pass at least one in every single game. So there's that degree of consistency of like, hey, he's in the game plan. He's a name that we're going to call. So the fact that he's out there and he's going to be able to score and he's going to be able to like beat guys on occasion, like he's going to be able to get past some guys. I think that's big for the offense, especially with Tez Walker now being there and really creating some space for other guys.
I saw a question in the chat, and Adam, I'm gonna bring it to you. From Jack in the chat. TA, what worries the panel the most about Miami? Adam, I will say this. North Carolina's ability to run the ball against that Miami front. To y'all's point, they're giving up like 58 yards rushing on the season per game. Miami's got some dudes up front. Carolina needs to be able to run the football to be able to do all these things we're talking about in the passing game. If I had to take one quote-unquote worry or key in the game, it's that North Carolina's ability, the offensive line's ability to move Miami off the ball.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree with that. Tommy, I would never disagree with you, first of all. I mean,
if I say something stupid, please do. So
why would I
ever?
I'd be like, I mean, you're an OG. Here we have the panel again with some of the older gentlemen on the left and the younger bucks on the right, too, by the way. I don't know.
Let the record show I'm the only one without glasses. Blue light or not, I'm the only one without glasses, so I'll take that.
Wow.
I was going to get to John. I don't know if we need to give John some love for the
decorations.
Yeah, the decorations. Thank you. I was going to say flair. I didn't know if that.
I worked hard.
Let's talk about your decorations. You've had the same schedule poster over there on, I guess, on your right for 3 years now.
Yes, I worked hard. I had to go procure a hammer to nail these things. Borrowed it from my roommate Drew. It is a scarf from a soccer team, as someone pointed out in the chat. I gotta match Tommy there with the bobbleheads and Adam with the beautiful backdrop of his, it looks like, spare office or room or something. So I had to get on the level.
That's where
we got to work on Jeremiah's.
Yeah, man, it's a work in progress,
I had to do something. but beyond all the bobbleheads and the stuff is a lot of junk in the bonus room. It's got to get cleaned up. So, but yes, John makes it clear that he's the one without glasses. So,
But I wanted to salute him because I know that I'd heckled John a little bit out of love. Obviously, John's like a younger brother to me, Johnny boy. But that is something I had overlooked, I believe, last week, John, was
That's right.
how the improvements that you'd made to your decor.
It was the big premiere. That's what I did on the bye week. It took me a whole week to hang this, this scarf and the poster behind me. I was all excited to talk about it, and no one noticed. Not even the chat noticed. So I'm glad it's getting some love tonight.
Yeah, you got some love tonight. I see a Team Young Bucks post in there. Don't sleep on the old dogs though, either, Adrian.
I'm reading them. I'm trying to keep up, read them in chat. Shout out to the 357. That's a relevant number with people calling us old, Adam. We get it out and clear people off our lawn. Shout out to everybody. It's kind of hard to keep up with the chat, so it is perfect that John's helping me do this. And I failed to mention earlier, and I'm gonna go ahead and do it. Johnny T-shirt and JohnnyT-shirt.com. Maybe we can get Johnny T-shirt to give John and Jeremiah some more swag for their walls, so they can have some relevant information. Maybe we'll hang an IC banner or something up there as well. But Johnny T-shirt certainly takes care of all the Inside Carolina Premium subscribers, and it's football season, but it's also chilly, and it's a little chilly in Chapel Hill, and it might be. So go by there and get your crew neck sweatshirts or your long sleeve T-shirts or anything you want for NIL. If you need some glasses, I'm sure they've got some Carolina blue shades in there. Go check them out. All the stickers you need, everything you need at Johnny T-shirt. If you need Carolina gear, it's Johnny T-shirt. And like I said, 10% off your order, premium subscribers. National guys will pay the bills on the audio side. It's On the Beat Live. UNC awaits Hurricanes. All right, guys, we're back. It's On the Beat. This is always a fun show for me to do because it's kind of laid back. It's not stressful. We got imposters in the chat cutting up. At least we've avoided all the other stuff that we've had in the past. Somebody will remind me. Jeremiah, I don't know if you remember, we used to have a bunch of porn bots, actually.
I was going to say, don't speak it into existence.
Yeah, I know, really.
Wow.
We'll find out if it's true. Send money. Let's see if it comes through. But anyway, let's talk more about this Carolina-Miami game. Let's sort of put this in perspective, Adam. A lot of people are starting to talk about 97. I think that's a little bit jumping the gun here. Mac made a reference that 97 team had the number one defense in the country. But your take on how it is going into this Miami game, it sort of feels like a little judgment night-ish type thing.
Absolutely does. And I think, I do think 97 is somewhat premature, but I think what we're getting into here with this is the perfect start. Like this Carolina team hasn't lost, and each week as you go further along that path, you're sort of inching closer to 97. As we all know, they started 8-0, and across the last 100 years, I looked it up because I'm a nerd. It is 100 years. I wanted to make sure. I know that's what we've heard forever, but we don't want to discount the 1914 UNC team that started 10-0. And then I don't know what happened to that 14 team. I don't know if they got too big for their britches, but they gagged in the season finale at UVA and lost, and they were not able to finish with a perfect record. But if you take 1914 was more than 100 years ago. Across the last 100 years, the best start in UNC football history is 1997, Mac Brown's 8-0 team that ended up only losing one game and dominating that Gator Bowl. And obviously the game they lost was Judgment Night. That's what they called it, didn't they, Tommy, in 97?
Yeah, it was
they called it that.
It was Judgment Night, and it was over in the first quarter. But the atmosphere leading up to that game, anybody that was in the chat that was there can verify this. The atmosphere before the game, leading up to the game day was there, and then you had the pregame, and then the game started. And it was pretty clear that even though Carolina was what, fourth in the country, fifth in the country, or
1
whatever.
and 4, I believe, right? Is that
Yeah,
correct?
it was not very competitive. It sort of showed the separation that Florida State had, which is different this year. There's no crazy teams like that. But yeah, it was judgment night, and they were judged harshly, but still
That's
had a
when
great
Florida
year.
State was Florida State,
Yep.
and I was a student then, and some of my buddies still talk about it because we had gotten there so early to try to get in when the student gates opened. That I remember they opened the student gates, and it was one of those situations where like you're like at a concert where you're moving and you're not moving your feet, you're being carried like by the. It was kind of like, oh my God, this is really happening. But I remember Peter Warwick coming out on the field. Was it Andre Wadsworth? There was a Wadsworth, I think. That FSU defense was super nasty. And Carolina's defense, I mean, that's arguably Carolina's greatest defense ever, right? I mean, I think that Carolina kept that game close because they could not move the ball to save their lives that night. But I mean, that was Bobby Bowden. I mean, that was when you saw those spears on those helmets and you got concerned, but yeah, to bring it back to present day, I do think it's somewhat premature, but I think the parallels are starting to form because of the perfect start, the stakes that are becoming involved. I mean, this Carolina team is a player in the ACC race. I mean, they're a contender, and it's sort of a weekly elimination battle royal to see who's going to fall. Is Louisville going to lose? Is FSU going to lose? What's happening around the country? There's only 11 Power Fives left that are unbeaten. Carolina's one of them. That's getting pretty neat, I think.
And I think to go right along with that discussion, Adam, I wanted to talk to this group about UNC's strength of schedule, because I think that's been one big talking point for those who are trying to poke holes in UNC's resume thus far. They would say, "Oh, UNC hasn't played anyone." So on ESPN's strength of schedule metric, you can look it up on ESPN.com. It's a free stat, but they have UNC ranked 90th between Massachusetts and Kansas State.
Yeah.
This is not the toughest schedule that UNC has ever played to start a season. But on the other hand, too, right? Mac Brown has referenced the fact that they've beaten multiple Power 5 teams. They've beaten a team from the SEC, from the Big Ten, from the ACC. So I'll actually throw this one back on you, Tommy, first to start. Do you think UNC has played, or how would you sort of think about UNC's schedule to this point? Have they played a challenging opponent yet? Is this an impressive set of wins so far? Or do you think this is still a case where maybe UNC hasn't played a really good team quite yet?
You said ESPN had Carolina's strength of schedule to this point as 90th?
Yes, 90th.
I'm looking at PFF. I clearly don't know how to read these. PFF has it 11th strongest in the country. It might say something about ESPN. Now, Carolina's remaining schedule is 100th in the country. But, I think they've beaten South Carolina, Minnesota, and Pittsburgh. And then they destroyed Syracuse. And none of those games were close. How many times last year he needs to save us, kind of like Luke, save us, a Star Wars moment. And it was like that every year. And the App State game was one of those things. This North Carolina team's beaten who they were supposed to beat, and they've done it handily. I don't think you have to debate that. I mean, you look at Miami. Who's Miami beating? They beat Texas A&M. That's it. They lost to Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech's ranked what? I mean, at this point in the season, the crazy thing is it'll all shake out. Adam, you mentioned Louisville. I mean, Louisville's got the easiest schedule, one of the easiest schedules in the country, and especially in the ACC. Does it matter if they're in Charlotte? None of that matters
No.
as long as you win.
It's not the NCAA basketball tournament.
Yeah. I mean, they're not
So
going to be
don't
seeded
need
6.
RPI and
Exactly.
yeah.
Jeremiah, what do you think about that argument that Carolina hadn't played anybody? I think it's BS, to be honest.
Well, I mean, relative to what? Because you actually kind of touched on what I was going to say when you brought up Texas A&M and Miami playing Texas A&M. I mean, like I don't know, like it's been four. It's been 5 games. You know, they not exactly enough time to get to the CFP or the thick of the ACC schedule. Like you really just have to play who's in front of you. I mean, I think some of these teams that now to really address it, South Carolina's 2-3. App State, they're a solid team. They're not a P5 team. Minnesota, I think, what are they, 3-2 now? And then you have, I mean, Syracuse was a really good team going into them. I think Syracuse is their best win. And then you have, Pitt. Pitt has not been great. Okay. But at the same time, I mean, you have to take care of business with the teams you play. And honestly, the fact that the games haven't been close says more to me. It would be one thing if they were playing, you know, that schedule or maybe even a more mediocre schedule than that, and they're skating by like a touchdown or 10 points or whatever. But I mean, they're handling business against teams that they're better than, which is what you would want. So I think that's probably the more important thing to look at. But I don't know. You look across the ACC. There have been some teams that played better teams, like Florida State opening against LSU. Duke and Louisville have played Notre Dame. Tommy mentioned Miami and Texas A&M. I'm sure there are a few others. So I mean, you can certainly say that it's not been like I think the teams that are remaining on this schedule are better than every team that they've played so far. That is 100% true. But at the same time, if you are winning by multiple touchdowns against teams that you're better than, right? That's exactly what you want. What's been the complaint about UNC the last several years, right? They play to the competition. That's what a lot of people say. They lose to teams that maybe they shouldn't lose to. Well, you're 5-0 and you're beating teams convincingly that you're better than, outside of probably App State because they needed overtime to beat App State. But I don't know. I think they're taking care of business. That's ultimately what you want to do. You want to take care of business, and I think Miami right now, this is the best team to me that they're about to face. I think the next best team after that is Duke. Like I think Duke probably is better than Miami in some ways, but like I'm just saying to this point, Miami will have been the best team. And then I don't know. I mean, do you continue on the schedule after they beat Miami and say, oh, but they only have to play Virginia and Georgia Tech. I mean, they have to play somebody. Like they have to play somebody. Like there's a lot of overlap in the ACC too with a lot of the teams that you face. So I won't say that UNC is beating any ACC contenders or CFP contenders. Nobody's saying that, but at the same time, if you're taking care of business, if you're doing what you're supposed to do, against the teams that are on your schedule, I think that is a good read on a team, just as much as the caliber of opponents that you've played.
It's like Carolina beat Pittsburgh and broke Jerkovic. I mean, is that Carolina's fault that he's falling apart? I mean, I'm
Yeah.
not sure what the prognosticator. You know who I'm talking about. John, you can share that link I sent to show it. Draft PFF has it 11th strongest schedule to this point in the schedule. I mean, in the season. I can't read that, but it's on there.
Yeah, I can walk through it. It's a little bit interesting, actually. The PFF and ESPN diverge a little bit, so I'll try to talk through this for everyone listening on podcast form as well. So PFF has UNC with the 11th hardest strength of schedule to date, and the 100th hardest strength of schedule remaining. Then you flip over to ESPN. I'll zoom in a little bit here for everyone.
This is like a class,
at home.
Really.
like a Zoom class here.
UNC has the 9th best strength of record, according to ESPN, but the 90th strength of schedule and the 53rd remaining strength of schedule. I have this stat highlighted here. This is game control. Jeremiah, I think that gets to what you were talking about. UNC ranks 8th in game control this season, right up there with some really good football teams like Oregon, Washington State, Notre Dame, Texas A&M. So there's, that's, I think, speaking to what you're talking about, Jeremiah, your ability to actually play well in some of these games. I wanted to bring up one more point too about the quarterbacks specifically, because that's another thing I've heard. UNC hasn't played, any really elite quarterbacks, but I think you have to face the slate of quarterbacks that you have on the schedule. And, you've already gotten by Spencer Rattler, Garrett Schrader. I mean, those are two, I'd
Yeah.
say, at least quality ACC quarterbacks. And you go down the list, I mean, who UNC has left is not that impressive of a slate from a quarterback perspective. Tony Muskett, Haynes King from Virginia and Georgia Tech, respectively. Riley Leonard, who could potentially be hurt. And then there's Cade Kublik and MJ Morris as well to end the season. So I think to maybe wrap this up a little bit, you have to just play the teams that you have on the schedule. There's no, you just get the schedule you're presented, and UNC has dominated against that schedule. So I think this argument that UNC hasn't played anybody doesn't hold a lot of water.
Well, my thing also, just real quick to go off of that, it's like, well, if you face a team, let's say they're 4-1 like Syracuse was, and you beat said team, yeah, like their record goes down too. So the strength of schedule and the strength of record numbers are like gonna fluctuate just as soon as you play a team. So I don't know, like, does a win become less impressive after you get said win because now that team is worse based on, like, I don't know, like it goes so up and down to me, and you never know like what these teams go on to do later in the season. Like some wins age well better than others, so it's really just like, it really kind of does come down to a week by week thing. Obviously, if we're talking about a top 25 team, that's probably, maybe that's different, depending on who we're talking about. But sometimes it's just like, I mean, yeah, would you rather them lost to Minnesota? Like, would that say more to you? I don't know. But
Do you think NC State cares whether Riley Leonard plays or not on Saturday?
Right.
If
They don't want him to play.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like, I wish him well, but we'll see you Monday, not Saturday. So I mean, North Carolina's beaten handily who they're supposed to beat, and that is a step up from where they've been, where this program's been, and that's why I called this game another stair-step type game, because this is another game against a good quality team. And what's funny is everybody wants to say Miami's trash because of the dumb coaching move. I mean, that is ridiculous, and that's where you can get lost in the hype or the social media side of everything. This team will be ready to play. I started some questions. Let's see if I can find some. Thomas Coons, who wants this one? Is Cavazos the type of player that can take over a corner spot when 100%? Adam, take it. I don't think so. Not in this current form, but I think he's a quality backup and quality depth when he's out there.
Yes. I don't want to be mean to legend Cavazos. No, I don't think. I think if he's starting, that's not great in terms of the other personnel they have out there. I think Marcus Allen is playing tremendous. I think Tayon Holloway is making progress. I think Armani Chapman is a pretty nice piece to bring off the bench. We can bring off a guy who's played that much football and plug him in there. I mean, the amount of depth this defense everywhere but linebacker, and Amari Campbell had an interception the other day. It's just an impressive amount of defense that they got going on. But I don't think Cavazos is going to be competing for a starting spot here in the next couple of weeks.
Jeremiah, I got a question for you if I can get back to those, and I think this one's relevant. James Ludeman says, will we see a third man dedicated to the shield for any punts this week, or can they shore it up with just two back there? Mac said it's a one-person mistake on both of them. I believe it was McKeithen last week. He's was
gone.
It?
He graduated. It was Malik McGowan at Pitt.
My bad.
Jonathan, it's fine, TA. I mean,
that's a big man. I don't want to. Yeah, he didn't mess up. You did great.
You had the M's. You had the M's and all. I mean,
I had the Mac, the McKeithen, and the McGowan. Either way,
it was Malik McGowan at Pitt. It was Jonathan Adorno against Syracuse. Weirdly enough, they did the 3-man shield at Pitt, and then they did 2-man shield against Syracuse. Neither worked. So.
Jeremiah, what you think about that shield type punt thing? I've seen it so many times across college football.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like giving guys free run at the punter. I'd rather block them at the line of scrimmage. But anyway, anything changes punt coverage for North Carolina this week, you think?
Yeah, we're gonna have to enlist the great Pete Limbo, out here, special teams coach of South Carolina. I know he'd have all the answers and thoughts on that, man. No, I think to me, I mean, kind of to Adam's point, if you've run with the two, you run with the three. I mean, like it's you want part of you wants to call it an anomaly, but like it's happened twice. But like almost the fact that it's happened twice is just like that makes it more of an anomaly because like, hey, this doesn't happen twice in back-to-back weeks to the same team. It's tough. I mean, I think that what you'd want to do from a preparation standpoint is if you can roll with two and have an extra guy like up there, you try to roll with two if you can and just like rep as much as you can, like, the best guys in a two-man shield and just kind of like, run it like that. Cause I guess if you have an extra guy back there, it's you allow for, maybe like an extra guy from the opposing special teams defense to get back there quicker, I guess. But so I don't know, like it's you just gotta block. Honestly, just block better. Really, like I know that's easier said than done. And I'm sitting here, I don't have the scholarship to do this, but I think from a preparation standpoint, if you can roll with two, and basically also I had a chance to kind of get a little bit inside on that play. They do it all the time, but that was like a rugby style punt. So he's punting on the move. I don't know if that had an impact on it, if that, the fact that he was kind of in motion gave them more of a, I don't know. But that was the style of punt that they were, trying to go for. But the fact that it's happened twice, I think there's certainly got to be a heightened emphasis on it. And you got to just I think you'd probably go with a two-man shield if you can, and just make sure that you're shoring up even if your guys up front before they even get to the shield have to do what they got to do, whatever. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on that at all. But if you can go with the two, to me, just mathematically, I think that's probably the best available option.
Here's the problem, and people in the chat and John, I see your comment to me in the side. But people in chat said, does it matter if you just hardly punt? Well, I mean, if you punt once and it gets blocked, that's not good. That's not good. And if you punt twice and one gets blocked, it's not good. And
it's a disturbing trend, I would say. I mean, I think the UNC offense is super high powered, but I think it's a concern.
Yeah, and Mac talked about last year, and this goes to another question that was in the chat: is it Coe or Burnett? Well, it's going to be Burnett from here on out. But Mac got to the point last year where they thought about it. They just might have to go for everything because they couldn't kick a field goal. That's certainly changed. But you don't want to get into that situation with the punter.
And real quick, don't forget the punt that got blocked and he ran it back. That was only a 3-0 game. So if Syracuse recovers that in good field position, I'm not saying they win the game off of it, but that was an important moment in the game. So
that became Carolina's first touchdown drive.
That was the first touchdown drive of the game.
Yeah, like that became a 17-play, 94-yard drive because Ben Kiernan channeled his inner rugby player and then went off for a jaunt.
I want to make sure we give a shout out to Jeremiah. I believe you did the interview with Ben after the game.
Yeah.
That was a tremendous interview. I learned so much.
He was great to talk to.
So make sure to check that interview out if you haven't already on InsideCarolina.com that Jeremiah did with UNC's punter after the game. GA, this question is for you. It's from Jack. Who's the star of the UNC Miami game if UNC wins? What's your take there?
Nate McCollum. I think Nate has big numbers. Miami's got some skill and some talent, but they're going to have to devote somebody over the top. One of the coolest plays that happened Saturday is the long pass to Nate. When you see it from the all-22, you see Tez running with his hands up, touchdown. That, whether you're a Carolina fan or not, if you're just a fan of the sport or whatever, or fan of guys cheering on each other, that was a cool moment. And I think Nate takes advantage of that again this week. I think Tez gets more involved. He was involved Saturday. Drake missed him, and he could have thrown to him on that. But I think Nate McCollum on offense for sure. But I'm not so sure it won't be a defensive player like Miles Murphy again to be the main guy for North Carolina. Mac does offense, defense, special teams. If I do it that way, I'm going offense McCollum, defense Murphy again, because I think this is a type game Murphy can certainly make a difference because Van Dyke's not going to run it. He's not going to break the pocket and take off and run all the time. So if you get pressure up the middle, it becomes large for North Carolina's ability to stop them.
I could see Elijah Hussey maybe making a play or two. You know, they clinched that game down there at Miami last year on a DeAndre Boykins interception. And I think the entire UNC team went with the, I don't know if you can see it, they turned the U down all around Hard Rock Stadium. You know, that's one of those moments, just thinking about it, like you know, Miami means something. You know what I mean? Florida State means something. Like even that Miami team last year went 5-7, but it's still cool to beat them. And like I remember that reaction when Boykins picked that ball off. I was like, you know, this is still like this is a meaningful thing to beat a team with that sort of status, you know, as Miami has in college football.
Yeah, and people always remember the 2004 game or whatever like that, but the fact is, and this is another big thing in this game, North Carolina's dominated Miami in the last 4 years. I mean, in the win column, it's 4 straight.
Yep.
They've had a ton of success. You talk about games that were coaching blunders cost a team a game. 0-30 was lost by a coaching blunder by North Carolina. Go back and watch the tape. I probably lost a vocal cord yelling that one. But anyway, so it's been an interesting series, and I like when Miami comes to Chapel Hill. The fans can be a little Miami sometimes, but they're usually pretty cool. And you mentioned Hussey, and let me mention this before I forget, and we'll talk more about it with the game plan later in the week. Xavier Restrepo is Miami's best player. He is Tyler Van Dyke's Josh Downs from last year.
Yep.
He looks at him every play. He plays in the slot a lot. Hussey gets on him. That's going to be a heck of a matchup to watch. That'll be a number 1 matchup to watch in this game.
Yeah, get your popcorn ready for that one. Yeah,
you will find out real quick if Hussey is who we think he is. I think he is, but this will be a great matchup for him to show it. Let me ask you this. Garrett Chapman asked, Jeremiah, who does Miami resemble most from teams Carolina has played so far? It's a tough one a little bit.
It's a tough one. I don't want to give you a cop-out answer, but I don't know. I feel like they're kind of pretty unique, right, to some of these other teams they've faced. I mean, they do have the strong run defense. I guess if you wanted to take that trait, right? I guess that's a trait that Syracuse had, you know, because they came in with a strong run defense. Miami's rushing offense has also been really good, but I mean, I just think the receivers that they have, especially with Restrepo, like you said, and I don't know, like it really is a team. If you had to pick one,
I'd say South Carolina.
That's a tough one. Would you say South Carolina? Because I was thinking South Carolina, but I don't know. I think just Miami's just so much better, like up front on both sides of the ball, which like had so much to do with that game. And like, oh man, like that's. I mean, is Van Dyke probably? I think Spencer Rattler is probably the best quarterback like on UNC's schedule. But would you say Van Dyke is probably the second best that they faced at this point? Not.
I mean, the app quarterback looked pretty good, but I think
he looked really good. Yeah,
I think Van Dyke
is pretty decent too. I mean, but Carolina didn't made him. I mean, Carolina
made him look bad. Yeah,
I mean,
The difference in people forgetting Rattler, Carolina beat Rattler to death, and he still threw for what?
300. It was over 300.
Yeah. It was over. He was 30 for 39. I mean, and Rattler has had like good games after that too. That's part of why I say like he went on to like show. Oh wait, like if he has time to throw and he's not like, you know, laying on the 50-yard line, he can complete some passes. Yeah, so I don't know, maybe like defensively Syracuse because of the traits they have, and then offensively maybe South Carolina, I would say.
Interesting take. Let me we're going to wrap this one up. Time flies when I'm talking to you guys, but I want to take a second. This last segment, and John's going to be the highlighted one. It's going to be sponsored by Congruity, another one of Inside Carolina's podcast sponsors. They're North Carolina-based national coverage, local presence, personal support, straight from the Tar Heel State. We say shop local. We mean it at Inside Carolina. Whether it's Johnny T-shirt on the front end, Congruity on the back end. They're empowering your small and mid-sized businesses owners with human resources and payroll outsourcing. They do all the hard work so you can grow your business. They take care of your people, and they do it all at a time with top-of-the-line technology, top-of-the-line customer service. Darren and Matt, those guys pride their company on the customer service they provide. They're obsessed with it, and they tailor-make your plan for your business, and they just take care of you. I mean, if you run a small business, it makes sense to hit up Congruity. So do this. Go to congruityhr.com/Tar Heels, fill out a form. Inside Carolina premium subscribers or Inside Carolina subscribers, period, get a free assessment on how they can take care of your business, how they can help you, how they can take care of personal, local, straight from the Tar Heel State. Congruity HR, congruityhr.com/Tar Heels. John Bauman, you are up. Are we going to call this hot takes or rants, or what you want to talk about here?
This is the Congruity Rant of the Week. I'm sure they'll be thrilled that they're associated with that as our presenting sponsor here.
They didn't know what they were signing up for.
We love our sponsors. We love our sponsor. Our Congruity well thought out take of the week, presented by Congruity.
Personalized approach, John Bauman's well thought out thought of the week from the Tar Heel State.
You know, Tommy, this rant is about the myth of Sisyphus. If you're familiar, the man, the legend who was sentenced to roll a boulder up a hill every single week, and then he would roll the boulder back down the hill. Sometimes that feels a little bit like football, especially from the coaching perspective. You know, you have to tell your team, forget last week. Last week is done. Turn the page. But none of us, as far as I know, are competing on Saturday. We have the ability to kind of take a second and appreciate. And I wanted to make sure we ended the show on this, because this past game against Syracuse, the 33-point margin of victory was the largest at home against an ACC opponent since the Tar Heels beat Duke 66-31 in 2015. And even in that game, UNC gave up 31 points. This past week, UNC gave up 7 to Syracuse. Before we turn the page and we talked all about Miami tonight, I wanted one last time to bring us back to just appreciate. Tar Heel fans should really appreciate what happened on Saturday. This was one of the most complete games in UNC football history. From the perspective of myself, who's been following UNC for a long time, it's probably the best I've seen UNC play. You know, on one hand, the best I've seen them play since I've been alive. So one last look back. I wanted to end the show on that rant, that we're so quick to turn the page in this business, and also so quick to criticize, but sometimes you have to appreciate. And the UNC football fan should appreciate what UNC did this past Saturday.
Do we clap?
That really wasn't a rant, John. I think that was some deep thoughts with John Bauman.
I want to see John. I want to see you mad. I bet you we could see you mad at certain times, but that was not a rant. I agree with Adam. That was like, this is let's rah-rah team. Let's go. I agree with you. North Carolina played a heck of a ball game against Syracuse. The thing about college football is we talk about stacking wins, and coaches talk about it. You don't stack one on top of that, then that one didn't even really matter. So North Carolina's in that boat this weekend as they come in. And when you mentioned Sisyphus, I was like, I think I fought him on a video game or something one time.
Is this the Oedipus complex?
Yeah, really.
How often
I was
do you
like,
think about the Roman Empire, John.
God of War or one of those video games. Anyway, anything left? Jeremiah, give us your final thoughts. One of my favorite things, and if folks haven't watched our On the Beat live from the Smith Center, from the bench behind the Smith Center, you need to check that out on the basketball side if you're interested in some basketball takes. Jeremiah kind of kept that one on the rails. So, Jeremiah, I'm going to let you take us away here.
Oh, man. Okay.
What do you mean, Tommy?
I don't know. I was ready to chase the dude with the food. I mean, dude walks by with some kebabs or something in the middle of the day.
Yeah, that's right. We did have yeah. It was a couple
dudes, interlopers, right?
Yeah. Came from some sort of event or something,
Just random.
Man.
They're just having a Friday. We're out there on the internet. They're having a Friday.
That's
Man.
awesome.
Final thoughts. I think one thing that I do actually kind of want to say now I think about it. We'll see how UNC looks with Tez Walker coming in with a full week of preparation. One thing that we did talk about and did ask about was, you had to. This was a guy you had to kind of rush in, 2 days before. I don't even know if it was a full 48 hours. Maybe it was a little bit over 48 hours before kickoff. So how is that? So people aren't totally sure how that's going to look. But now, since you had him in the spring, you had him in the fall, you're going to start this week with him in the game plan. So I think that this is an opportunity for not only for the offense to open up, but for Tez himself to kind of make some big plays. He had opportunities at some. Obviously there was the one overthrow and then the one where they went to Nate, but obviously he flashed his ability. And then just another thing I was thinking about, and I wanted to kind of bring it up, when he was at Kent State, he had big moments on big stages. So in 2021, he had a 73-yard touchdown in the Idaho Potato Bowl against Wyoming. And then last year, he had obviously the screenplay that he broke against Georgia, and then he had he had a really good game against Washington as well. So this is a guy that when he was at Kent State, he had big moments on big stages. Obviously, Saturday's game is going to be a big stage, if you will. So I don't know what the exact stat line will be, or anything like that, but I'm expecting a coming out party of sorts. For Tez Walker now that he's back in the offense. UNC is going to look to go to him a lot. They looked to him a lot against Syracuse. A lot of those passes were shorter, didn't quite get more than 10 yards any of them, but that was really just a rhythm thing. So I think there's going to be a big Tez Walker play or two against Miami on Saturday.
Yep. Adam, final. I'm going to turn this up. You see, this is my new wave minute glass. Go.
It's hypnotic, GA. It's very hypnotic. Like I think I could.
I'm trying to figure out what it
is.
is.
Sleepy time with it. I've got UNC 37, Miami 20. I guess that would make for another convincing win for these Tar Heels, who have a lot of convincing wins this season. Everyone but the App State game, I would say. But yeah, you win this game. I noticed earlier Jeremiah had already counted it as a win because he said, if the Miami win when he was talking about the schedule, he'd already had it marked down.
Did I?
You just offhandedly said, yeah.
Did I? Okay.
Win, when we were talking about going through the schedule, but I mean, I think there's a lot to like about the way Carolina's playing. And I don't know what type of Miami team is going to show up. They could show up motivated beyond belief. This could be the most motivated Miami team you've ever seen. I'm not a big believer in Mario Cristobal as a game manager or an in-game coach. I think he's a fantastic recruiter. I mean, he could be a nice dude. I don't know him. But they're in some turmoil, down there in Coral Gables. When you have the athletic director show up to your weekly press conference and he never shows up to your weekly press conference, that ain't a good sign. We're also get on me. My voice got high there a little bit, but that's not great. But again, you could use this as motivating fuel, and you could see Miami breathing fire. Either way, from what I've seen lately from UNC, I have a lot of confidence in them. This could be famous last words, but I think they win the game. I think they move to 6-0, and you're looking at UVA next, and on the CW. By the way, we'll talk about that next week, I guess.
Right after Saved by the Bell.
Right. I mean, you know what? We could give our audience a homework assignment. Come with your best CW jokes next week, maybe. I don't know. Or you can email John at producerjohn.gmail.com. But I've got it I have got it. Those are along the lines I'm thinking. 37-20 UNC. I think it's a game where Drake throws for 300 yards, and you sort of have to rely on Drake. I don't know if you're going to get much in the running game. I could see Amari and Hampton maybe punching in a short touchdown run or two, but I don't think you're going to have, what Carolina threw for 442 and ran for 202 or something like that against Syracuse. That's unreal. That is unbelievable production. But I think it's a game that you sort of, Drake May wins it offensively, and I think the UNC defense shows up again. Maybe you create a couple late turnovers from TVD. So I got 37-20. We'll see what happens.
One interesting take before I get out of here. We'll talk about this later. Greg and I will have our next level with a Miami beat writer. It's Chris Stock from Inside the U. Developed a pretty cool relationship with him over the last few years. I'll be on his show after that. And then Jason and I will do a game plan on Thursday night. How will it be when another team, though, has a chance to prepare for Tez Walker in the week? Syracuse did not, and it was pretty clear they had nobody for him. How does Miami defend him and defend that deep ball? It'll be interesting to watch. Miami will show up, and I think they'll show up ready to play. I'm not big on the front-runner aspect of it because every team's different. Guys want to win, and guys certainly don't want to go out like that. I think we'll see a motivated Miami team. But I think this team, Preston in the chat, I think earlier said, this team's starting to feel a little different, and I agree with that. North Carolina football, Saturday night in Kenan at 7:30. It's been On the Beat, sponsored by Johnny T-Shirt and Congruity, Adam, Jeremiah, producer John, and 350, 360 of our favorite friends on Inside Carolina on a Tuesday night. Shout out to everybody. Be safe. See you next time.